Welcome back to the Rowing on the Square podcast. Today I want to talk about head racing. We've just had some local head races. We've had two in our area, the Lift Bridge Regatta, and then also the Head of the Genesee. And racing in both of these races, head races are interesting little animals. You get out there and you practice. You're trying to see what splits, you're able to move the boat with. What type of stroke rate do you think that you can move the boat with and still be efficient? And I think where a lot of teams and people who are doing it on their own might get hung up is in that transition between what rates am I actually moving the boat with efficiency? And then sometimes what rate am I trying to reach for because that's what I think I should be rowing at for that particular regatta or for a head race. So typically for a head race, in a perfect world, you'd be able to row it at a solid 30, 32. You would be able to maintain your speed the whole time and not see any changes or gaps in what you're doing. But if you're a master's rower like myself, you can tell when you go out on the water that there are some rates where you're moving the boat well. So for example, say you're doing some shorter pieces at 24, 26, and you're getting some really great movement out of the boat. But then when you transition up to 28, 30, it becomes frantic. It becomes difficult to maintain. The puddles get closer and closer together. There's not that same feeling of run. You feel like you're rowing every inch of the water. That is a cue to you that you need to step back and try to figure out what can I do better at these higher rates. And, the thing that really made me realize that, the difference between like 20, 22 when you're doing your steady state and 28, 30, 32 when you're at race pace is I've been trying to do a lot of work on my running. And some of the running workouts that my Garmin's kind of been coming up with them, and I've been picking up the pace a lot. And what I've been realizing is like, as I pick up the pace, it's just, you have to move your body differently. You have to put your stroke together differently when you're trying to row at a race pace that might be outside of what you would usually do at practice. I know we spend a lot of time doing steady state in the fall, and then we start to crank up the speed, and then we wonder why we're not efficient. So taking a step back, I think that playing around with the idea of, say your comfort rate is 26 and it provides you with a certain split. Maybe practice some pieces at 28 and 30, some shorter pieces where you try to best that split time that you can get at a 26, but you can still feel that efficiency. I feel like a lot of times you jump into the higher rate and you're like, well, it is what it is. 28 just feels like rowing every inch of the water, or 30 just feels like rowing every inch of the water, and you've lost that power. And I always say that rate is earned, and that comes Ethan Curran. I remember him saying that, so it didn't come from me. Ethan would always say that rate is earned, and you have to earn it by the force that you're putting into the boat. So if you don't have enough speed and enough force, if you can't produce enough force, then it's not efficient to be at 28. Even if you can row it, it's not going to translate into something that you can easily do. So how do we get better at these higher rates? We have to practice them. And spending time starting out, maybe you can only hold an efficient 28 for 1 minute. You might have to start there. You might have to start with, okay, can I create a 28 that's maybe 5 or a couple beats lower than what my 26 golden pace is that like feels efficient? Like, you're going to have to build efficiency at those rates. You can't just, wish it out of your race that you're just going to be like, all of a sudden when you get up to the top of a 5K race, you're just going to turn around and row at that 28:30 and it's going to feel fabulous because the extra adrenaline. It might, but taking the time to practice and build upon that. So you might start with just that minute and then see how long you can hold on to that minute and that rate and that split and that movement. Because the point is that by taking the rate up, you want to be able to move the boat more efficiently. You don't want to slow down. So you want to make sure that when you take up the rate, that you're getting some type of bang for your buck. Because if you're rowing more efficiently at 26 and you're able to hold that rate and you're able to hold that split throughout the whole race, it would be more valuable than rowing at a 28 at the same split, wearing yourself out, and then get to the end of the race and then being worn out and slowing down anyway. So that's one thing that I would consider as, the head race season ends, what could we do better next year? Another thing that I think would be really helpful to practice is passing and being passed. When I would coach, I would do the leapfrog drill where I would have you'd start one boat out a little bit ahead and they're on the paddle, and then the boat that's on pressure is supposed to work through that boat that's on paddle. Once they're all the way clear, the next boat comes and goes all the way through. Now, this drill is really, really important for being able to pass a boat and be passed. So when you're passing a boat, I always say that you have to go all the way through them in order to be efficient with your pass. Otherwise, if you come up to another boat and you sit there, you've burnt a bunch of energy to get there. And then there's the potential, if that boat sees you sitting on them, that they can go ahead, and they haven't cranked up their energy anyway. So they can take that energy that you used to get to them, they could take that energy to go past you again. So I always say that when you're doing your passes in head racing, in a perfect world, you'd want the pass to be an efficient pass where you will be able to get all the way through. Now, if you took a 10 to get to that particular boat, you might have to continue your power strokes all the way through. And if you're going to pass, be definitive about it. Now, if you have a boat that's behind you and coming up to you, you should stay focused on what your boat is doing, stay inside your boat. And then if they are one of those boats that decides to come up and sit, that's when you make your move. That's when you say, nope, we're going to take it back, and you are the definitive boat now. So you go ahead and you do that power, whatever it may be, to open the water between those two boats. Now, if you take those 10 power strokes and you can't shake that other boat, then you have a decision to make. You either are going to stay there and row your own race, or you are going to burn more energy to try to get ahead of this boat. Now, what can tend to happen is you can end up burning each other out. That's why I feel that you need to break the other boat before you burn your boat out. So if you're going to sit on that boat and you're sitting head to head, be prepared that you're going to run out of energy. And so you have to potentially let that boat go. There is the idea that if you do hang there and you're kind of tossling with them, and then you let them go, by the time they pass you, they may slow down again, and then you could take them and go ahead. So there's a little bit of mind games that you can kind of play, but knowing if a boat comes up on you, you've already lost time on that boat. That's just the way it is. So what do you want to do with your race? Do you think you have it in the tank to be super competitive with this other boat without sacrificing your time? Because you could really, if you put a lot of effort into it, you can get past this other boat, but you could end up ruining your time, even though the time might be better anyway because they came up to you. So it's a strategic decision to make whether to let that boat pass or fight it out. I find that fighting it out for the boat that's being passed tends to be more helpful than a boat that comes up and sits and then slows down. So if you're deciding to pass, you must be definitive in your pass. If you are deciding that you are going to let that boat pass and row your own race, that's one way to do it, so that you can just work on your own particular time, knowing full well that if you let them pass, then they will potentially beat you. So there are a lot of different things to think about as far as head racing and how you're going to put the race together, especially because of the distance. You have a lot to kind of consider And as far as sprinting, over that long distance, you really need to put in a quality distance sprint. And what I think as a quality distance sprint, something that's going to make a difference, somewhere in the 700 to 800 meters to go. If you're as ambitious as going for that final 1,000 as a sprint, that's something to kind of think about. Like, how do you want to structure your sprint? And then in practice, taking that time to practice that sprint. How are you going to build it up? Final 1,000 meters, might be only a couple minutes. It's the last couple minutes of the race. And if you practice the last, say, 4 minutes of the race, how you're going to, for each minute, you're going to take X amount of strokes. So you might go from a 30 to a 32, and that 32, and that would be minute 1 at a 30, minute 2 at a 32. This third minute you're at a 32, but you're at put a power 32 in, and then your final all out for that last 32 strokes. You want to structure it as something that can be tolerable for your crew, something that kind of keeps everybody involved. I think that as coxswains and as like people who steer like me, knowing the landmarks is really helpful. Also taking focus 10s, not necessarily power 10s. When I was coaching, I would tell my high schoolers that power 10s were like the special abilities in a video game. So if you're doing that power 10, you can't do it like every 250 meters. You can't take a power 10, but you have to use them strategically. Use those power 10s, take the power 10s for the particular person in the boat, or a particular landmark, or 10 for your coach, or 10 for whatever you may think. So it's really good to plan those out, let everyone be aware, and that will be really helpful.